What is going on, team? Welcome to another video. If it is your first time here and this is the first time you've ever seen my face, hi, happy to have you. My name is Jim Galvin. I'm 34 or 35 years old, depending on when this is released, and I'm attempting to be a YouTuber because I'm trying to prevent growing up. Covering all things performance, health, physique, functional bodybuilding, classic strength development, power development, functional strongman, biohacking, ancestral living, all of it. Today I'm going to be offering, I guess, what is my first kind of equipment review. And as the title and the thumbnail would have given away, I'm going to be reviewing the global barefoot movement, and specifically with the two brands that I have tried, which is Vibram 5 Fingers, which are the weird little Planet of the Apes shoes, and Vivo barefoot shoes. Now, for those of you that know me a little bit better, you will know that I regularly sauna, I regularly ice bath, I eat organ meats, I drink bone broth, I intermittent fast, I have my own red and infrared light therapy paddles, I do an increasing amount of breath work, blah, 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 blah. So I love biohacking and I do all the things I can to optimize the way that I perform both in the gym and outside, the way that I look and the way that I feel. I hack my sleep, I've got a fucking weighted blanket, I've got all this stuff. So by virtue of that repertoire of the things that I dabble in, it would make sense for you guys to believe that I'm an advocate of barefoot running shoes. Because the theory behind these things is that it reverts us back to a more natural way of moving. However, there is a good chance that unless I get smacked over the head by Thor's hammer and completely change my mind, I am never, ever, ever going to run in barefoot running shoes ever again. And let me tell you why. I have here some Vivos. These are the swim runs, basically because half my stuff is in storage at the moment, which is where my other Vivos are. However, the swim run ones were still on my shoe rack. So imagine these would be the normal ones, but effectively they're all of a similar ilk and similar kind of, not similar design as such, but similar ethos in terms of super wide toe box to allow toes to move independently. That is something, judging by the fact that I'm currently wearing 5-finger socks, I concede is a very good idea. So a wide toe box where toes can move independently. I think if you're wearing these with normal socks that hold your toes together, having a wider toe box is still flipping useless. I think that 5-finger socks are probably more useful than these things, and I'm about to explain why. Completely flat, so there's no heel drop and there's no arch support or padding. So those are three of the main features. Wide enough at the toes to allow your toes to move independently. That is your toes, just in case you didn't get it. Completely flat, so there's no drop from the heel, and effectively there's no extra added support or lift in the arch. And if you compare those to something like Hoka's, which still have a relatively wide toe box and toes can move around, which is good, but obviously they are not flat. They have a hell of a lot of support underneath. There's a little bit of a raise in the arch, and there's a lot of support and kind of padding underneath to disperse some of the force from the ground. So back to the matter at hand of Vivos and why I will never run in these again unless I'm being chased by a bear, in which case, even out of principle, I'd probably just lie down and let him have his wicked way with me. 3 separate occasions I have attempted to make the transition over to barefoot running and barefoot moving and barefoot shoe wearing, I should say. The first time was in the Vibram 5 Fingers, the ones that are literally as thick as a piece of A4 paper, and they have separate toe compartments. They are the shoes that you put your feet in, and once again, toes, you can move your toes independently. I didn't run in them initially. I did a lot of stretching, I did a lot of calf release work, I did a lot of Achilles work, I did a lot of toe moving, and I did some lifting in them. And purely by virtue of the fact that I was walking around, I would say that the amount of pain and discomfort in my feet unfortunately increased. That was not a particularly long stint, and that was the first one, and that was back in 2017, 2018. So a good while ago now, but twice since then I've attempted to migrate over into Vivos. And I did run in them a little bit, but again, I have had stem cells in my Achilles. I roll out my calves every day. I roll out underneath my feet, underneath the arches of my foot, you know, a good couple of times a week with a lacrosse ball. I do different toe exercises. I, you know, attempted to train myself into them. I was aware that it was a transitional period as opposed to just a leap of faith and just put them on and run a marathon. But again, both of the times that I went over to Vivos, one of them literally about 6 months ago, I'm getting masses and masses and masses of knee pain. I'm getting calf and Achilles problems. And this is just from walking around. The most recent time I never ran in them. So 6 months ago, I never ran in them. I was just walking around, but I was just kind of smashing the pavement. And maybe it is just my feet, and there's a weakness in my left ankle, which I'm aware of, and that probably contributes. So what I'm not going to do is prescribe, and none of this stuff in terms of my reviews have ever been overly prescriptive, telling you that a company is shit and you need to stop doing X. All I'm going to do is share my story, but I'm also going to share why I think that my story might not be as rare as you think. My feet and ankles have had a little bit of damage. About 15 years ago, I did Royal Marine Commando training. I then did a tour of Iraq. I then did a tour of Afghanistan. And I then became a full-time member of the Team GB bobsleigh team. Yes, I have seen cool runnings. And no, I don't have a lucky egg. So that's a fair amount of workload, right, on your lower legs, which is why I kind of wanted to move over onto Vivos, because I thought, well, again, the ideology behind the whole thing just makes so much flipping sense. However, I think that once ex-athletes get past a certain age, the likelihood of them being able to make that transition in a period of time that isn't going to be incredibly detrimental from having to drag it out for a couple of years might just diminish. That is me saying, if you have a few aches and pains and niggles anyway in your feet or your Achilles tendon or your calves or your ankles, I don't feel as I'm being defeatist when I encourage you to ask yourself the question, is it really worth it? Generally, on a day-to-day basis, the number of injuries that I have are very flipping low, and the main time I seem to get an introduction of pain is when I start wearing these things. And there's two reasons why this might be quite common. The first one is, again, for people who are over 25 who have been walking and moving in a certain way. The longer that you've been moving in that certain way, I would imagine the longer the transition is going to have to be to get you to a position where you are not only able to survive wearing these things, but these things become optimal and advantageous over these things. So that'll be the only point of migrating over onto Vivos, right, is that it is better for us than this. And I understand from an ideological standpoint that it is, but if you've been moving in shoes like this for 30 years, if it's going to take you 3 years to get to a stage where your feet, ankles, Achilles, whatever, are okay with these, and thriving in these more than they would be in these, 3 years is a long time, right? And I just don't know if, considering I roll my calf out every day, I wear 5-toe socks, I roll out underneath the arches of my feet, I stretch, I mobilize, because I do all of these things, I don't think that me staying in these shoes is necessarily going to be that much of a bad thing. And the other reason why wearing these might be a little bit trickier than you think is because of things like concrete and harder ground, and the types of surface that our Neolithic ancestors probably weren't walking around on. There's still about 10 to 20% of my bandwidth right now, even now I'm talking to you about this very subject, that is kind of, remorseful of the fact that this didn't work. I would love to be here telling you it did. There's a reason I keep spunking money on these products, and it's because ideologically it makes sense, but for me, I know that for me, and now an increasing number of people that I've spoke to, that's why I'm making this video for you now, have echoed the same story. They keep trying to go over to Vivos or Vibrams, they keep trying to do the rehab stuff to rehabilitate their feet so that it's okay, but for some reason it's just not doing the job. Which then does kind of beg the question of whether or not implementing those other rehab techniques, like rolling out the arch of your foot and massaging and maybe a monthly acupuncture session on your calves, is good enough. Because I don't believe that I'm speaking from a place of petulance here. I believe I'm speaking from a place of kind of objectivity. I think, looking at these two, if I continue to do those exercises but stay in these, it's going to be better for me in the long term than if I continue to do my exercises but move into these. I genuinely believe that, and I don't even really know why, whether or not it's just been too much damage done to my feet, or whether or not concrete is just too hard. I don't know what it is, but I will not be running in these again. I might get to a stage where if it starts to feel appropriate, I may lift and do other things in them, and I'm not necessarily against that. That is another component of this conversation, of this topic, whether barefoot movement shoes should be the term instead of barefoot running, and people have a good 12 months of doing that before they start to run, and that might be good for your feet. But to be honest, there's two kind of further things I want to bring your attention to. Number one, if you did do this prehab stuff on your feet for 12 months by wearing Vivos around or Vibrams or whatever, other brands are available, I just don't really know what they are, spending 12 months moving around and getting used to it, and then attempting to make the transition into running in them. And I don't say this sarcastically, but what's the point exactly? Why would you take the risk? If you are perfectly healthy, if you are doing all of the stretches and moving properly and walking barefoot on the grass a little bit, running in these massive flipping cloud spaceships, and everything's fine, is it really worth the risk to try and transition into running to them? I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I've asked myself that question, and the conclusion that I've given myself is no, it's not. And the other thing that I want to bring to your attention is this. There will be some die-hard fans of this. Again, there are numerous people that have told me that they've tried, and these are not dumb people that would have just put these things on and gone for a 5K. These are people who would have and did stick to the transitional exercises and protocol and whatever. Numerous people have said it didn't work. However, I'm sure there will be die-hard, like it's an barefoot movement is an ideological thing. That is to say, there are people who will get a barefoot shoe picture tattooed on their flipping forehead and will lay claim to the idea of it being the best thing since sliced bread. However, how many people do you know that have tried it, that have even said that it has been amazing and it has been incredible for them, and they swear by it? How many people do you know that are able to demonstrate a tangible change in the way that they either live or move or lift or perform in any flipping way? I know some people that swear by them, but all of the benefits from them are kind of self-reported. They're like, well, I just feel better. And that's great, and I'm sure that they do. But I don't know anyone that was squatting a certain amount and running in a certain way that has now transitioned into these, and that looks like they're running so much smoother, that has cured some kind of ailment that they had or reduced pain in an area, and is now lifting more. Running better, freedom from pain, lifting more. Let alone having the holy flipping trifecta. I don't really know anyone that can tangibly say, and not just from a self-reported standpoint, but that it will be noticed by someone else, that has even one of those benefits, to be honest. I'm not an expert in this. I am not a podiatrist or chiropodist or wise guru shaman of the feet. But I would say that if you allow your feet to move around naturally a little bit, I don't know if training in barefoot shoes is worth the risk. If it's something that you want to mess around with, then I get it. And again, I understand it from an ideological point. But of the people that I know that have transitioned into the barefoot movement and are now part of that, only a small group of them are still doing it and say that it's been helpful. And of that small group, an absolutely minute group can actually demonstrate some kind of flipping tangible benefit. If you are somebody who trains regularly and you are into biohacking and you're into making sure that you optimize your performance, your health and your physique, and I imagine that you are in some way or you would not have stumbled across this video in this channel. If you have not yet done so, please like and subscribe, by the way. My advice to you is buy some 5-toe socks, so whatever shoes you're in, your toes at least can move a little bit independently. Make sure you get some shoes with a slightly wider toe box so that you have that movement space, and just endeavor to generally keep your feet healthy with a couple of different stretches, foam rolling sessions, and use a hockey or lacrosse ball underneath the arch of your foot. But for the love of God, do not spend all day, every day in normal shoes and then put on some Vivos to either train or to run in straight off the bat. That is the equivalent of wearing a compression belt to the bus stop, to the supermarket, to sit down at the office all day, every day, and then only taking it off when you're going to squat or deadlift. I am no foot shaman, but for me, if it is one of these two, maybe to walk around in if that's your preference, and I'm sure there's some benefits for that, but in terms of transitioning to hardcore training and running, every single day. Hope you did enjoy that, guys. If you did, please do smash that like button. If you have not yet done so, make sure you subscribe. We have an incredible amount of content on the way in regards to me graciously sharing with you what I believe is the ultimate alchemic blueprint of how to be the most functional all-rounder you can possibly be. Have an amazing day, guys. Stay strong, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next video.